The hall was the same. The board had been removed, and the benches overturned. The hearth was cold, the ashes of the last fire sodden from rain seeping in through the roof. The floors were covered with rushes rank with mildew and animal urine, giving the great empty space a sour stink. One whiff, and Fergal observed, "No one here but the rats. Filthy rats." "It looks like they left in a hurry," said Gallard. Just then a great squawking arose from somewhere outside. Conor, having seen enough, retreated to the yard to see a flock of rooks and ravens swirling over the dun. The screeching emanated from some place behind the hall. "Let's see what all the noise is about." Fergal rolled his eyes, muttering, "And then let us be gone and be glad." Passing down the narrow gap of the close-set buildings, they slipped around to the back of the hall, where they found several more storehouses, a large stable, and a fenced horse-pen. The contents of that pen had drawn the carrion birds, and it drew the dedanan now. The sudden appearance of the men sent a multitude of rooks and crows and ravens, squawking and flapping in all directions, and not these only. Among the swirling, gyrating flock were magpies and gulls, jackdaws and jays. A few larger birds, buzzards, red kites, and an eagle, glanced up and glared at the men, but did not take wing as they continued their grisly feast on the mound of bloated human corpses. Conor started forward and then stopped to stare. The others stood frozen in place. Heaped in the centre of the cattle pen were the decaying remains of a score or more human beings. Men, women, and children, their bodies discoloured and swollen in the early stages of putrefaction. Some were naked, but for the scrags and hanks of hair that still clung to their exposed skulls. Many others still wore the tattered shreds of clothing that had covered their emaciated frames. Among the rags and scraps of cloth could be seen the distinctive checks and stripes of cloaks and shirks, breeks and mantles, once colourful, now faded and grey with rot and decaying matter. "Bob's breath," coughed Donal. "They were dedanan." Fergal muttered a curse under his breath, and Gallard stifled a cry. Conor felt his crimson blotch of a birthmark throb and burn with a sudden heat like molten iron flashed through him, blinding him. "Dedanan!" he shrieked inwardly, his mind reeling. "Dedanan!" These were his countrymen, his people, and that they should be so abused and mistreated in life, and degraded and dishonoured in death, pierced him to the core. Then the wind shifted, and the full force of the stench hit them all at once. The sickly sweet, feculent stink of rotten meat, combined with the nauseating tang of burst entrails, that cloying, pungent reek of dissolution and corruption, the signature scent of death. Fergal gagged, and Donal spat. Conor felt the gorge rise to his throat, and bile surged into his mouth. Gallard puked in the dirt. Many of the corpses had been worked over by the birds and vermin, and were now little more than hollow husks of ruined skin stretched over bones. Other bodies were still being torn to crimson strips, as the birds greedily ripped gobbets of flesh and muscle from the dead. Most had their eyes and tongues plucked out, and gazed in empty mute astonishment at their own demise, and that of their doomed clan. Here and there the shocking white gleam of bone, picked clean, protruded from an arm or a leg, a skull or rib cage. The sinuous serration of a spine lay exposed to the air and elements, its covering of skin and muscle stripped away and devoured. Sensing no danger from the men, the black, circling squall of birds began settling once more on the funereal heap, reviving the poor broken bodies with a kind of squirming, hopping, flutter of wings and clacking beaks. Soon the decaying mass was covered with a feathered cloak, as the scavengers squabbled and scrapped over the choice morsels, their dry, croaking calls and outraged screeches rising in a ceaseless clamour. Conor, unable to look away, took in the sight. Slack-jawed, rendered silent and cold by the shocking brutality of the display, he could but stare in shock and disgust, and a slowly mounting rage. For there was little doubt in his mind that these doomed wretches had all met death around the same time, perhaps even on the same day. Gallard, Wiping his mouth on his sleeve, drew a long, shaky breath and flung out his hands in a gesture of futility.